everyone, Shanna here, welcoming you to another episode of Worthy Asian, a safe space to talk about generational trauma, Asian parenting styles, and finding our way to healing and knowing our worth. This week, we're actually still continuing our previous conversation about complicated relationships with our parents. Yep, surprise! I know I said 3 parts, but when I was doing part 3, it seemed to make sense to do a part 4 on do we owe our parents? The guilt and shame we've grown up living with has instilled in us that we owe them. Because who had you in their womb for 9 months? Who put a roof on your head, food on the table, clothes on your back? Who sacrificed everything in their life to give you a better one? Well, what I said before is still true. We do not owe our parents anything for simply bringing us into this world and keeping us alive. I know it feels like we have to. It's an expectation, it's tradition, it's culture. But it still is a choice. It is not mandatory. And personally, I would want to give back out of love and respect versus giving back because I feel obligated to or to quiet my own guilt and shame. And that's what I want for my children, that they would look after me because they want to, not because I made them. It is not uncommon for Asian households to have elderly parents living with their adult children, to live as a family unit and have adult children support their parents in many ways, including physical care and finances. And in these more modern times, perhaps the parents don't live with the adult children, but the adult children may pay for their accommodation and living costs, or at least regularly send money home to their parents to support them. I can actually see this as an ideal and thriving home environment if it came about in a nurturing, loving way, where the relationships within this home are nurturing and loving. But unfortunately, that just wouldn't be the case for me, and thus, I cannot fathom living like this. In the eyes of most Asian families, I'm a pretty terrible daughter. I don't send money home. I don't really pay for anything for my parents in regards to bills or gifts or vacations. I don't really spend time with them either since moving out of the country. I don't call all that much, and in fact, I'm pretty much no contact with my mom for over a year now. And a few years ago, I was told by my mom that at Chinese New Year, it was in fact my turn to give them a red packet. And let me tell you, I honestly hated that. I wish I could tell you that I was the gracious and generous daughter willing to give back to her family with no qualms, but I wasn't. And of course, I felt guilty and shameful for that. I feel a lot of resentment because I still feel a lot of pain. Why should I? Haven't I given you enough? My love, my youth, my innocence, my trust, my hopes and dreams. Why should you get any more of or from me? From this life I fought to build for myself, that feels like I did it not because of you, but despite you. And how awful is it that I think like that? And perhaps maybe they feel the same. Like, why shouldn't you? Haven't we given you enough? Our life, our time, our home, our money. You wouldn't be here without us. This is slightly off topic, but I promise to bring it back. I was stuck before thinking that I did owe my parents for the life I built myself. If they didn't treat me the way they did, I wouldn't be the way I am now. I wouldn't have had the struggles that have challenged me and gotten me to where I am. I wouldn't be as strong or resilient. I wouldn't be on this mission to be different and better. But it didn't feel good to credit them for all my wins. I just couldn't see a way around seeing them as the root of it all. It took a lot of self-work and talking to the right people in my therapy journey to figure this one out for me. I went to a workshop with a lady named Yvette. I'll put her details in the show notes. She was trained in the teachings of Louise Hay, a famous self-help author and motivational speaker, and one of her bestsellers is a book called You Can Heal Your Life, which I've read and would recommend. Anyway, I told Yvette how I was stuck, and she said to me, "Did your parents do all those things that hurt you on purpose?" And, I mumbled about how, probably not, because they have their own trauma. And then she just said, "Did they do it on purpose?" No, they didn't. And she goes, "Then why should they get the credit? They were just being themselves, doing their own thing. If they were purposely going, I'm going to do this to Shanna so that she's going to grow up and go to therapy and work on making changes in her own life, then maybe you could give them some credit. But it's likely they weren't, and they were just stuck in their own bad habits." So the question is, how did you respond? And the light bulb flickered on. I found a quote on Instagram that helped me further. "Trauma doesn't make people stronger, kinder, or more empathetic. It's the person and their efforts in healing. Stop giving credit to the trauma rather than the actual person that worked so hard to heal." That has helped me a lot, and I hope it helps you too. You don't owe your strengths, your wins, to someone else. Remember, you were the one who decided to change, who wanted something different, and you did the work for that change to happen. Anyway, back to it. And gosh, I don't even really know how. It's complicated. It's natural to care for your parents as they get older. Asian culture just takes it to another level of responsibility and pressure. It's not that I don't want to do it, I just wish I could do it from a place of love instead of a place of moral duty and obligation. And as a nurse, I struggle with the fact that I took care of people for a living, and I found it so much easier to care for strangers, to be helpful to strangers, than it was to be those things for my parents. There are so many questions when it comes to giving back to your parents. How much is enough? What is the balance between honoring them and honoring ourselves and our own families? What is enough that we won't feel regret, shame, or guilt? I unfortunately don't have these answers for you. And it's not so simple. It's not just black and white and covering expenses. If the roles really reverse and you become a caregiver or financially responsible for your parents, it gets messy, especially when you have your own family and expenses to consider. I had a small taste of it when I visited my family back in 2021. There were issues with taxes and benefits, large amount of debt, preparing a house to sell, expired passports and visas, being jobless. Just a big mess. And despite needing help, they refused to listen to anything me or my husband had to say, despite us spending countless of hours researching, talking to professionals, and formulating a concrete plan that would help them solve their problems. The stress was incredible. And instead of spending my few weeks in Canada, enjoying my vacation, spending Christmas holidays with loved ones, taking care of my own needs, my own family's needs, I was focused on them. We ended up having to give them quite a bit of money to help. And being that I hadn't worked in a few years, my husband had to help me. And I felt so guilty, like I was pulling him into my issues, my family problems. Of course he was supportive and didn't mind. He said that was what marriage was about, joining together, helping each other, what's mine is his, and vice versa, and that my family was also his now. And you go into a marriage thinking you know these basic things, but you don't really know until something like this tests the relationship. I've learned a lot about what unconditional love really is because of my husband. And it isn't just about the money. It's about being generous and caring, wanting the best for you, wanting to help in a supportive and loving way, and not expecting anything in return. Anyway, the money we gave was gone in a flash, and of course, it did very little. And I learned very quickly that if you just fix things for them, do the work for them, they never learn. They don't understand the natural consequences of things. Their problems will continue to occur because they haven't learned how to problem solve, how to change. And despite all our efforts, it still wasn't enough. It wasn't appreciated. We were the cause of their problems because we asked hard questions, held them accountable, made them face the harsh realities of their life choices, and we were the ones that caused them stress. My parents blamed us or each other, and none of the blame was theirs. I knew if I never had to do this again, it would still be too soon. I know my situation is a little different because I was helping them out of a bind versus helping on a consistent basis. But would the issues really have been all that different if I had been giving them money regularly? I don't think so. It's not like I would have had a say in where the money went. Maybe a solution to that problem is covering concrete bills versus just giving money. I currently pay for my mother's cell phone bill because it required online setup and she didn't know how. I have done so even though we no longer speak, but I'm okay with that. It's a number that stays fairly the same, and I know exactly where the money's going. And I know that if I didn't cover it, it would cause problems for my mother, and that's ultimately not what I want either. There is only so much you can do, so much you can give, and only you know what is reasonable and doable for you, mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially. And a lot of this is that generational piece. Parents live their life in a sacrifice kind of mindset. They lived for others, for their parents, and then for you, their children. They didn't love themselves or honor themselves. In a way, they learned that their rewards for their sacrifices would be when their own children carried on the tradition of caring for them. They were expected to care for their parents, so in turn, you are expected to care for them. This is what they are owed. But you see, not just from you, not because you owe them, but because of life, generations of it. Because they grew up not fulfilling themselves, they have an emptiness that they are hoping you, others, or things can fill. But that is an impossible task, because we are not made to fill others. It is not our responsibility to make others happy or be the fruits of their labor. We are to fulfill ourselves. And so this is a huge piece on how we can break the cycle of generational trauma. We start living a life outside of the sacrifice mindset. We live honoring ourselves. Others naturally benefit when we take care and love ourselves. Like what I said last week of only being able to give when your cup is full. And I think there's a piece here about how the giving needs to be mutual and respectful, which again includes boundaries. If you feel like all you do is give time, support, and or money, and your parents still expect more or treat you poorly, and you're in a dynamic that makes you feel stressed or unhappy, then something needs to change. It needs to work for everyone involved, not just for them. And when I mean everyone. Who else is affected by you splitting up your time, your resources? Of course, there's you, your needs, wants, hobbies, etc., but also your partner, your children, and other dependents. Another thing to consider is who else is caring for your parents. Traditionally, the responsibility can fall on the eldest of the adult children. I'm an only child, but to me, that doesn't seem fair. though more parties can mean more complexities. So again, it's up to you what's going to work in reality or not. Taking care of another adult is a huge undertaking that will require a lot of discussion and re-evaluation, which can be hard for our Asian parents who in general often do not have these kinds of conversations with their children or anyone. And re-evaluation is key because just because it worked for 5 years doesn't mean it's still going to work for the next 5 years. Parties need to be flexible and understanding as circumstances change for all sides. Future generations will be able to tell the difference between giving back to our parents in a place of compassion versus resentment, the difference between genuine care and moral obligations. Future generations can learn by seeing that caring also includes healthy boundaries, mutual respect, and open communication. I haven't been too involved with my parents since 2021, but I know the time will come where I will have to start taking care of them more, and it'll likely be sooner rather than later. It may not be regular help right now, but I know that when it comes down to it, when they are in need, I will be there. And that's what's working for me right now in this time of my life. I hope that I can be a good example to my daughter when that time comes. I hope I can teach her to be loving and kind while also honoring herself. And I hope one day when I am old and needy, she will be there for me, not because she owes me, but because she knows she is loved and loves me back and wants to be with me. For those of you struggling with this, you are not alone. And hard as it may be to find the courage and way to make it work while honoring yourself, once you do it, once you find that balance, everything else will fall into place. Even in times of stress, when you are working from a place of abundance, of feeling fulfilled, of knowing your worth, things will naturally be easier. You'll be able to think clearly and make decisions from a calm and well thought out place, and have room to look at other perspectives. But if you come from a place of pain and resentment and stress, then your decision making will be affected. They may be rash and not thought out, and you may be irritable, which again will affect how you treat all those around you. You don't owe your parents, but it would be nice to be there for them. I wish it was more black and white for me, that I could support my parents without the ickiness of my past trauma, without these feelings that hold me back. But it's also not selfish of me for wanting to put myself first. And are you ready for my cheesy line? Please put on your oxygen mask before assisting others. Well, that's it for me today. There's really not much else I can think of to say other than you don't owe your parents, and you can support and give back to them how you see fit, how it feels good for you. You can and you need to honor yourself above your parents. So you do what you can, but you don't do it in detriment to yourself. You are not selfish for putting yourself first, for taking care of yourself first. How you take care of your parents and what that looks like is completely up to you. Only you know what works best for you. I will be taking a short break while my in-laws are visiting Scotland and enjoying the Easter holidays with my family while my daughter is out of school. So please ignore my closing line of seeing you next Monday. I will be back with a new episode Monday, April 10th. As always, thank you for sharing your time with me. I would love to connect with you on Instagram at worthyasianpodcast to hear any questions, ideas, or stories you have. And if you'd like a space to be able to share, receive, or give support, please join and help build our community in the Worthy Asian Facebook group. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe, share, or leave a review so more people can find us. I'll be back next Monday. So until then, take care, talk soon, and much love from a fellow Worthy Asian.